How would you go about convincing somebody who is a complete naysayer?
A lot of failed projects, because we see those.
The early adopters of AI.
I had the opportunity to look the other way around. We secure a process and data.
Hi, my name is Faisal Abbasi. I'm the Executive Director for AI and Data at Bell Integration. I'm joined today by Henrik Eriksson, who looks after our business development for AI and data. And the first question I have of you is, particularly in retail, where we've got prospects and customers coming to us talking about particular retail examples. What change are you now seeing to what we were seeing a year ago within AI and data itself?
That's an interesting question, actually, because what we see more and more coming in are implementations that will adopt something that's called digital twin. So basically copying reality into a digital twin world to make calculations and understand from a predictive perspective what can happen, for example, in a store. So how do I meet the demand from my customers entering a store with different sensors, with cameras, to be able to foresee and manage the load on the store as such? As a store owner, you don't want people to stand in line waiting to pay, giving up the goods they have and walk down the street to another competitor. So you need to make sure you have the right amount of staff, being able to get the customers pay and get them out with their goods, or support them at the floor in the store as such. If you go to a hardware store, for example, you might have people that need help. Being able to predict what type of staff do you need in the different situations based on what happens. It could be a payday, for example, increases the volume into the store, and predict those things. I think you will see that in other areas as well, more and more. Look at travel industry. What happens? We are now here in London. What happens if there is an interruption to the flight traffic into London Heathrow? What impact will that be on the other airports nearby or even further out to be able to manage that demand if Heathrow can't take on the flights? And that's not only taking down the aircraft, it's also making sure that we can predict the ground staff.
Some of the image recognition technologies, in particular what you've just said around retail, if you think about where that's going, do you think that's going to be a replacement for IoT devices? Because certainly with imaging coming through in terms of image recognition, you can identify empty shelves, as you said, or too many people within the shop itself. Is that how you think things are going to go in terms of where this technology could lead to in terms of use cases for customers?
Over time, yes. I think it will be a combination as a start, because if you already have sensors for people entering a store, you don't have to replace them with a camera equipment immediately. But over time, I think with that technology that now exists, you can do so much more with the video imaging and understanding video imaging, and then do predictions based on that. So over time, yes, but now in the near future, I think you will see a combination of IoT devices and video. But there are a lot of other interesting aspects of video analysis that comes into play and predict what might happen based on what you see. And it's not always replacing, but it's also supporting staff on different areas. Just look at, if you want to, going back to the airline industry, having someone inspecting an aircraft and having a video camera supporting the pilot doing that inspection, or ground staff doing that inspection, and based on AI algorithms, get support in detecting possible flaws.
And going back to your example of inspecting a plane or inspecting a warehouse where you're seeing rows and rows of stuff being stored, the video imaging could detect whether somebody was not wearing a hat or following incorrect procedures, etc., and the alerts went off. I can see that for aeroplane detection and so on. But when it comes to office environments, or when it comes to corporations that we're dealing with, where do you see that imaging technology being then used to be able to then identify potential areas of issues, particularly around using AI as a predictor to suggest that if this table was placed this way, it's likely to fall and hurt someone, etc. Do you see that coming through eventually, or?
Yes, I think, again, it will be a combination of different AI technology areas, I would say. AI comes into play in a lot of areas today. So my example on the aircraft might be a bit futuristic, but looking at if you have a hard hat on, for example, take a construction site. You have a combination of where AI will help the people going on site to understand the specific security measures for that specific site based on data that exists, risk data and all that, to be pulled so they take the right security measures. Then you can combine that with video imaging to see that, do they follow those procedures? Is there a risk now? For example, someone not wearing a hard hat, which is maybe a bit simplistic, but to go in and probably not only blocking that person from conducting the work until they get the hard hat on, but it could also be so that you foresee potential future security measures that need to be taken in place based on all the data that AI can consume and predict upon. So you can also increase the quality of the security instructions and measures that you have. So it will also develop and evolve over time. I think we'll see that based on the video imaging.
So we were hosting a roundtable with our prospects as well as customers. We were joined by a lot of senior executives in the conference itself. We talked a lot about maturity of clients and AI adoption, particularly the early adopters of AI. What did you take away from that? Because obviously there was a lot of input from a lot of folks, etc. What would you say was a synopsis of what happened on the day?
First of all, it was very interesting for me to be in the Shard for the first time, because I've had an office on the other side of the Thames before, so I've always looked at the Shard. Now I had the opportunity to look the other way around. So that was one takeaway. That was an interesting view, or a new good view of London. The roundtable discussion as such was very interesting. As you said, high-level CXOs mature in this area, and mature in different ways, I would say. But the key takeaway I think I would take from that one is that the ones that have been successful deploying in production, because not all projects goes into production, are the ones that has focused on a specific area and done that one specifically to be, and also trying to achieve a business outcome of it. So not just doing multiple projects, but let's focus on 1, 2, or maybe 3 that will make a difference for the organization, and go with those ones and drive them to completion. That's a good one.
But did you find that the ones that were successful were backed by business, and there was a clear business outcome from the AI use cases that people were trialing out? Did you find that was a key success factor, along with running a few projects rather than having multiple projects, but also at the same time having a business focus? Because that's what I thought when I was listening to some of the...
Yeah, I would say very much so. Because a lot of failed projects, because we see those, my experience, I don't know if every second project never reaches beyond the first innovation phase. Because some of the leaders has given the technology side the task, can you please do some AI for me?
Yeah.
Probably you also can share experiences from that area where you sit. But and I would say that the ones in that roundtable discussion that has come the furthest or most mature, they've started with what is the business requirement. Let's get that in first. And then see, okay, how can we now utilize modern technology to fulfill that goal? And I would say those ones are the ones that showed in that roundtable discussion to be most successful and most mature, I would say, in this area. So yes, very much so.
So I think in the roundtable, what I found was interesting. Obviously, there were different vertical organizations being present there, but I was really surprised. I was quite surprised actually that insurance has moved on so much more compared to 5 years ago when we first started to sort of talk about AI within insurance. The cases were quite simplistic. It was mostly chatbots, how they could help with trying to claim an insurance, trying to do an insurance claim.
And I think what we saw in that room there is that it's been driven from a business requirement from the start. I think that's also what we see from within my practice, that when we go out and we help with AI strategy with customers, we help analyze where they are and where they need to go. And where they need to go are driven by the business requirements and the business outcomes. And based on that, we create a plan with the customer, with their business requirements as the driver and their internal needs as the prioritization mechanism for that. And if we would take out that business requirement out of that prioritization, it will be a plan that would probably not succeed in the end. So it is imperative that we do that and we have the business with us in such a project. So a lot of those projects are driven out of the CIO organization, but it has to be backed up by and sponsored by and influenced by the business and their requirements. What we also see, if I spin into that direction, is that another component for success in AI and AI projects is data. So if you miss out data strategy and governance, and you don't have that under control, meaning that I have the right data, I have access to the right data, the data is correct. If I don't sort that out, I risk using AI on bad or wrong data, or not all data. And that could be devastating for a project as well. So we do those type of engagements as well, where we look at your current maturity in the data space and what is required for the organization to deliver for AI projects to be successful in the end. So that is sometimes the first step we take.
But do you think, if I go back to the insurance scenario compared to the other fields that we saw, based on what you're saying, one, could it be that insurance is highly regulated, so there's a lot of governance and there's so much input you will take and there are guardrails put into place in terms of what can be then said? And also, if you think about it from a data perspective, insurance data is fairly clean, because
it is.
You've got claims, you've got details of policies and so on, which are always going to be mostly 90% or 95% accurate. So when it comes to insurance, is it because they've got the data? Is it because they've got governance in place, rules and regulations, which allow the AI to explore beyond to a certain limit and then ensure that process then continues to where it should be running using AI in terms of the data set it's got itself? Do you think that could be a reason why insurance is a little bit more successful?
I would say yes, because it's regulated, and insurance is very strict because you have an insurance letter stating the facts. The challenge for a solution today to help in the insurance area is that those insurance letters and underlying requirements for understanding those ones change, maybe on a yearly basis. So in some countries, I come from one of those, where if you have an insurance letter from 15 years back on your house, that is still legitimate, and it's not changing. The insurance letter as such is not changing over years. But if you come and you take the similar insurance for you moving into a house next to me, you might have different
terms and conditions,
T's and C's, exactly. And that complicates things a bit. And that's also an area where AI can help to understand those differences and still predict and help with, for example, fraud situations, because insurance, they deal with fraud on a daily basis, people are trying to get money out of it, and you need to be able to detect that with those different terms and conditions that exist.
So what happens to organizations? And again, I know you deal with a lot of these during your workshops, etc. What happens when you're not in the world of insurance? You haven't got really good data. You haven't got amazing processes, and for the last 5 years you've been cobbling together processes behind the scenes, trying to make it work. Nothing's perfect. Where do companies then start that journey, that AI journey, for that journey to be real?
So, first of all, organize the data, and then make sure that you start with use cases that you have the foundation to be successful with, so you don't start something that will fail. And then in parallel, you build those ones that are very important that might lack data. There is another aspect of this that we haven't really touched upon yet, but that's the human component and change management required in these situations to be successful. We see that in parallel with the planning and running AI projects, we also run generic AI training to demystify AI for an organization, the staff. So while the management team are building the strategy, the organization is being trained. And we can't forget that one as well into this mix, because that is almost equally important, because people that are afraid of something will not understand the benefits, because AI delivers a lot of positives into an organization. And if we can get that positives over to the employees, they will be more likely to embrace it. So it comes as a benefit to the business and their end customers out there in the end. I think that is important to remember in this equation as well.
Now that AI is kind of moving faster, much quicker in terms of running that process, there is that awkwardness, I'd say, when it comes to transformation, because how much time you spend on that business change that's going to then need to take place.
So if I may take an example in simple customer support. In the beginning, we started to have simple AI solution, if I put it that way, to drive conversations that are of repetitive and simple nature. We saw some resistance by the current human resources in those organizations. And over time, as AI has evolved, it becomes more dynamic and can handle situations that are more complex, which means that we're taking out more and more of the human component. However, what humans have seen is that if they embrace it, they will be able to deal with things that are more complex themselves, more interesting. The more day-to-day tasks can be done by AI. And the ones that has taken the third step into this, when humans are part of the interaction with an end customer, they actually use AI as well to speed up their work and help them along the way, either with structured process or with understanding complex situations. So it empowers the humans. So we have it at the front, and we have it also to support the humans in the dialogue in the back end.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've also noticed, we're talking a lot more about governance and auditability. So having that process that we've just discussed being easily audited, it makes a big change factor for organizations who are concerned about ensuring that they followed a process in terms of governance. Are you seeing that in conversations with the people that you're talking to?
Yeah, so sometimes the world now talks about agentic as an example, which means that the agents can make more decisions themselves and go into different directions depending on the situation. However, in some situations, that is not what we want, because we need to follow a strict process and we need to distinguish those from each other and maintain the structured process for the situations where that is needed and required. For example, to follow rules and regulations. You can't just make up a KYC process in a finance institution, so know your customer. It has to be a certain structure to it, but it could be invoked from an agentic perspective to be done as well. So we need to look at the different areas, and we need to, from a security perspective and from a regulatory and security perspective, take all these things in consideration, so we don't hand off too much to things that we do not control as much as we did in the past. Also, back again to data, what type of data do we use to make our assumptions in AI? Because it's predictive, a lot of it. So it's assumptions made on data that we have and the models. How do we make sure that we do not risk our company's reputation in that process, and instead use AI to secure that? And we need to have that mind shift in the, let's say, the management and decision position of an organization, to not see it as a threat into security, but also see it as it's a way to make sure we secure a process and data. And we see that as well with more and more organizations starting to build their own language models, as an example.
There are a lot of folks who often say, is it really real? Will it ever be implemented? Clearly it has and is being implemented. Where do you think that resistance comes from? Is it personal? Is it organizational? Is it just that I don't want to know it's out there? Is it just avoidance of AI? Where do you think that particular line comes from?
First of all, human nature. I think it's a sound signal that we are afraid of something that we are not fully aware of what it is. Because I think some of the people that are scared of AI comes from not knowing what the algorithms are and what they are doing and designed to do, and what it helps with, and what boundaries we have given AI. That's why we run the trainings on general AI into an organization, to get people to feel more comfortable with AI and not being afraid of it. But of course, you've seen the discussions on different medias around the world for years that AI will take over and all that. I'm not one of the people that stands there and says that this is doomsday and we will all be raised. No. I think we just need to make sure that people are aware what it is and what it helps us with on a daily basis. And then start to think, should I be afraid or not? I see it as a positive.
So do I. But anyway, I think we've got to conclude, and it's great you bringing up all this amazing information, certainly that you've gleaned from our prospects and customers, etc., and so on. How would you go about convincing somebody who is a complete naysayer and say, where should their journey begin? And let's make it easy. Let's put it into the terms of corporate customers, pretty much is what we're serving here. So how would you take a fairly, let's say, somebody who's fairly negative, being a CIO in this case, or somebody in the technology area, how would you start that journey with them around saying, if you're negative about it, these are the things you should look at? So take it in this best light scenario.
It's actually a complex question. I'll try to bring it down into pieces. So first, I would say that there are data already from analysts proving that it's a high cost to your organization if you decide not to embark this journey compared to your competitors. Because it's not so that you just eat up that lag in no time. You have to be on the bandwagon, so to speak. Otherwise, it will be a costly process. And I think you brought up some data. We might be able to come back to that on what that actually is, if it's a factor of 5 or whatever it is, if you're a laggard. So that's one thing. So if you say that, no, I will not embark this, they need to be aware of what that might do to their business and the cost of this, because eventually they will need to. Second, I would say that I have an example of a very good short novel to read. And I think you know which one I allude to. It's Who Moved My Cheese? You're laughing. It's a good novel. I would recommend everyone to read it, because it can actually be applied into so many different situations in life. And I would say that would be something that is really important for that CXO to read, because that's what's eventually going to happen. So go in, ask for some help, and see and understand, could AI do something for my business? What's the journey forward? And what should my strategy be? And then embark that. I think that's an important thing. And it's basic back to cost of your organization and cost to your business.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming down, talking about it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me here, Faisal.